Hello. I'm Dr. John, and this is the channel where health and education meet. Have you ever found yourself starting something full of energy, a diet, a course, a project, and, a few days later, you simply lost motivation and gave up? This isn't a lack of willpower. It's your brain being programmed by an invisible cycle of reward and frustration that you never learn to control. In this video, I will show you exactly why you give up so quickly and how to reprogram your brain to develop real discipline and persistence, based on science. We'll talk about dopamine, motivation, and how your brain's reward system can be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. And the best part, everything with practical examples you can apply today. If you feel like you start with everything and never manage to go all the way, if you keep sabotaging yourself and blaming yourself for not being able to stay focused, this video will give you clarity and real tools to change that. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this cycle is the first step to creating a solid routine, achieving long-term goals, and, most importantly, regaining control over your own life. Few people know this, but our brains function like a goal manager in disguise. It's always in search of rewards. When you dream of achieving something, whether it's money, recognition, or even that chocolate at the end of the day, the system behind the desire is a sophisticated one involving dopamine. Dopamine isn't a pleasure drug, as many think, but rather a substance of anticipation. It's the "go ahead and do it," not the "phew, I did it." This small detail changes everything about how we motivate ourselves. Imagine the following. Someone decides to start running every day. On the first day, the excitement is high. By the second day, it starts to feel heavy. By the third, the bed seems more inviting. Why? Because the brain isn't receiving the same reward signals it felt when the idea first came up. And since it operates like a radar always searching for the reward, if there's no novelty or immediate result, it starts shutting down the system. The result, giving up. Not due to laziness, but because of a misinterpreted neurological programming. The interesting thing is that this misreading can be reprogrammed. But before thinking about changing habits, the person needs to understand how this reward system influences everything, from choosing a hobby to chronic procrastination. The secret is learning to recognize how dopamine works, and more importantly, how not to be dominated by it. And this leads us to another critical point that almost no one notices but that affects your productivity every day. Nowadays, we live in a world where everything happens with a click. Literally. Feel bored? Open Instagram. Want a snack? Order it on the app, and in 20 minutes, it arrives. Want a compliment? Post a selfie. The problem is that this constant consumption of instant rewards is addicting the brain, and more, it's atrophying our ability to wait, to fight, to persist. Dopamine overdoses, and our reward system starts requiring increasingly stronger stimuli to feel the same pleasure. Result? Nothing is enough anymore. It's like we're training our brains to only enjoy the easy part of life. But the great achievements, the ones that really change your reality, don't come with fast delivery. They require time, focus, repetition. But when the brain gets used to jumping from stimulus to stimulus, it begins to reject any activity that doesn't bring an immediate reward. Studying? It takes time. Investing? It's risky. Entrepreneurship? It's slow. The brain, addicted, prefers the comfort of a notification rather than the discomfort of real progress. Want a simple, practical example? Take someone who wants to learn to play the guitar. In the first few days, their fingers hurt, the sound is weird, and coordination fails. Without a quick reward, the brain orders, quit that and go watch a video of someone playing well. And then the cycle starts. passive consumption instead of active construction. And the more it repeats, the harder it is to break this pattern. But there's a way out. And it all starts with understanding why, after all, we give up so quickly. Many people think lack of discipline is laziness, but that's not really the case. Most people give up quickly because they've been conditioned to believe that effort is only worth it if the result comes quickly. But the brain wasn't made to endure prolonged frustration without understanding why. When you start something and don't see visible progress right away, your reward system simply shuts down the motivation. It understands that it's not worth the effort, even if, further down the line, the prize would be enormous. That's why gyms are crowded in January and empty in February. The promise was a new body in weeks, but the mirror didn't cooperate. And without that quick feedback, the brain sends the signal to abandon the mission. The same happens with that online course you started with enthusiasm, but that got stuck on lesson 3. Or with that reading habit that died after the second chapter. It wasn't a lack of wanting. It was a lack of immediate reinforcement to maintain the desire, but the good news is that you can outsmart this, and in a simpler way than it seems. The key is to feed the brain with small proofs that the effort is worth it. Instead of waiting for big results, you can create micro rewards, like marking a visual check on a list, recording progress in a notebook, or even sharing small victories with friends. Because when the brain realizes that the effort is being recognized, it's willing to keep going. And here comes another common mistake that sabotages this perception: the belief that progress needs to be visible. One of the biggest saboteurs of progress is this habit of thinking that it's only working when you can see it. But real progress, the kind that transforms lives, almost always starts invisible. Have you ever planted a seed? In the first few days, there's nothing there, just dirt. But the process has already begun. The root is forming, even though you can't see it. It's the same with habits, learning, and emotional health. The mistake is digging up the dirt every day to see if it sprouted. This only delays growth. When someone starts studying something new, like programming, for example, in the first few days, they feel like they're not progressing. But the brain is, indeed, forming new connections, called synapses, that haven't yet translated into performance. But they're there, silently being built. The same goes for someone who starts meditating. At first, it seems like a waste of time, but weeks later, emotional control starts to show. And then the person realizes, results come after consistency, not before. The problem is that society sells the idea of progress as something Instagrammable. If there's no before and after, it's not worth it. If it can't be shown, it has no value. This creates anxiety, frustration, and, of course, giving up. But those who understand that the invisible precedes the extraordinary learn to play the long game. And for that, you need to reprogram not just your habits, but the reward cycle that drives the mind every day. Reprogramming the reward cycle is like teaching the brain to enjoy the journey, not just the arrival. And this requires intention. Instead of waiting for motivation to appear, you need to create an environment that triggers small releases of dopamine throughout the process. A simple example? Break large tasks into smaller steps and celebrate each one. Finishing a chapter of a book could become a reason to listen to your favorite song. Did 15 minutes of exercise? Mark it on a visible board. These small victories retrain the brain to value progress, not just the end. Another powerful strategy is to link difficult tasks to positive stimuli. For example, if you hate organizing your emails, do it while listening to a podcast you enjoy. If you need to study something technical, use a new pen or write in a beautiful notebook. It might seem trivial, but the brain associates experiences. When you make the journey more pleasant, it reduces resistance. Dopamine gets released during the effort too, not just at the end. That it's also worth using what neuroscientists call habit stacking. In other words, linking a new habit to something already automatic. Want to start reading every day? Do it right after breakfast. Want to start writing? Do it right after your walk. This creates an anchor, a logical sequence that the brain understands as a routine, and, gradually, turns effort into a pattern. The more natural it becomes, the easier it is to sustain interest. Sustaining interest in something long-term is almost an art, and yes, it can be trained. One of the most effective techniques is using visual goals. When a person visualizes progress, they feel like they're going somewhere. A board with crossed-out goals, a progress journal, or even apps like Habitica or Streaks create this effect. The brain loves to close cycles and gets motivated by this feeling of advancement. It's like playing a game where each completed phase releases more desire to keep going. Another useful practice is to vary the stimuli without losing the main focus. If you're studying something, change the format. One day watch a video, the next read, the next listen to a podcast. This variation keeps interest alive and prevents the brain from going into automatic mode, which is the first step to discouragement. For example, someone who wants to learn English can alternate between subtitled series, podcasts like Luke's English Podcast, and simple readings on the LinkU app. The content changes, the goal stays the same. Changes the game, regulate the difficulty of the task. If it's too easy, it turns into boredom. If it's too hard, it turns into frustration. The ideal is the point called the desirable effort zone, where the brain feels challenged but not overloaded. Think of it like gym training. If the weight is light, you won't develop. If it's too heavy, you'll get injured. The same goes for mental discipline. And that's where one of the biggest enemies of consistency comes in: unrealistic expectations. The biggest mistake most people make is being guided by expectations of quick results. When we start something, our brain creates a glorious image of it. Let's imagine this: you decide to write a book. In the first few days, the inspiration flows, you feel incredible adrenaline. But over time, progress slows, the days become hard, and results don't show up as quickly as you imagined. This gap between what you expected and what's actually happening is one of the biggest causes of early abandonment. This mismatch between expectation and reality is a major villain because the brain starts to feel like it's wasting time. But, in reality, true progress happens backstage, out of the spotlight. Remember that seed you planted at the beginning? What it needs isn't your anxiety, but time and continuous care. And that's only possible when you learn to love the process, the journey, and not just the final destination. The mistake is measuring success by superficial milestones, when in reality it's built through the small, invisible victories that accumulate over time. The solution is to align expectations with reality. It's a mindset adjustment. Instead of focusing on the big goal, which may seem distant and unreachable, it's more efficient to focus on the daily steps, the learning of the process. If your goal is to lose weight, for example, don't beat yourself up because the mirror doesn't reflect the change in the first month. The focus should be on continuous improvement, on daily effort, on the small progress that gradually accumulates into something much bigger than you imagine. Now that you understand how the brain works, how reward and discipline are shaped, it's time to act. It's not enough to just have the knowledge. The next step is to put everything we've discussed into practice. Start with something small, a habit you know you can master. It could be meditating for 5 minutes a day or writing that task list you always put off. The important thing isn't the size of the action, but the fact that you're starting to do it, and believe me, the initial effort will seem challenging. Your brain will test you. It will try to take you back to the old patterns of instant pleasure. But if you can get through those first moments, if you can prove to your mind that effort is worth more than immediate reward, then you'll be creating a new reality for yourself. And all you need to do now is take the first step, and the rest, as we've seen, is a matter of staying focused and reinforcing the positive cycle. If you like this content, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next tips on how to stay focused, increase productivity, and turn your goals into real results. Remember, discipline isn't something you have, it's something you build. So, what are you going to start building today?